Is AI just another opportunity for the left to influence kids' worldview?
100%. I think that's one of the greatest concerns. If you go back to 2019, when the United Nations met in Beijing, of all places, they adopted the Beijing Declaration on AI in Education. What is the worldview of the bureaucrats and the diplomats who were coming together through the United Nations to come up with this declaration that essentially wanted to mandate AI in all education? Well, it's not the worldview that most Americans share.
Clearly, we have a lot of problems that we have faced in this country against parental rights overall. And one of the challenges that we're looking at currently is very top of mind for all of our people. How can it not be? And that is, of course, artificial intelligence, or AI. Yay, the machines, so exciting. Oh, there's your timer. You're good. Look at that. You got it done in under the time, so nice job. So the next panel that we have, or the next session we have, is a panel presentation that is going to look at exactly that, AI in education, and what we should be considering, what we should be aware of, and anything that could be a threat to parental rights or not. Like, what are the benefits? Are there any benefits? It's a great question. We're going to find that out. So leading the panel is Annie Chestnut Tudor. She is a policy analyst in the Heritage Foundation Center for Technology and the Human Person. With prior experience working in the U.S. Senate. And I knew that Annie was the person to moderate this. When I saw her recent report, it was just released in March, by the way, and it's called The Promise and Peril of Artificial Intelligence in Education. It was perfect. And if you haven't read it yet, I strongly recommend that you do. So I'd like to please welcome Annie and my first panel of speakers to the stage.
All right, thank you, Missy, for that introduction. And actually, I did bring some copies of that paper. It's in the back on the Heritage Foundation table, or it's also online. But you won't be hearing so much from me tonight. I'll be asking the questions, and you'll be hearing from our experts here. Alex, I heard that you just came from the airport because you had a delayed flight, so I'm glad you can make it.
Thank you.
And thank you for rushing over.
Thank you.
So I guess I'll go order. So that's in the middle, Alex Newman. He is president of Liberty Sentinel Media and host of the Sentinel Report, which is a weekly audio and video news and commentary program. To his right is Michael Marancino, a GOP technologist and the executive director of the Center for Responsible Tech. And lastly, we have Jennifer Burns, who is the founder of Accelera and head of school for both American Faith Academy and Classical Consortium Academy. Jennifer was also instrumental in starting Turning Point USA's K-12 education initiative. All right, so like Missy said, we are going to be looking at what are the opportunities and the threats of integrating AI in education, and what happens when AI gets between parents and children. Is this a new threat to parental rights, as Dr. Lindsay gave a great presentation on why parental rights and responsibilities matter and why they're essential to raising successful children. Now we have AI. Is this good or bad? In between, we'll get right into that. But first, to set the stage, so AI, big topic. It's a lot of things. When we're talking about AI in education, Michael, could you give a definition for us?
Sure. Thank you, Annie. One of the first things I try to make sure people understand is when you use the term artificial intelligence or AI, that basically doesn't mean anything. The understanding of AI as some kind of super intelligence or gestalt or something that's about to arrive and be Terminator, it's really unhelpful, particularly for parents when dealing with schools, to just talk about AI, because AI can be anything, right? AI can be algorithms, but primarily when we're talking about AI in education, or I should take a step back from education, just say when we're talking about AI generally, we're talking about chatbots. I mean, all of you in this room here know AI by the chatbots, whether it's ChatGPT, Claude, Grok, Scout, whatever, the Gemini, those are the ones that you know, and they're all natural language processing, which is really annoying for people like me who have been working with machine learning for just under a decade, that there are so many vast applications of AI as fast indexing algorithms. And so again, I like to specify AI can be a lot of things, a lot of different things, but when we're talking about what we acknowledge AI to be in the current kind of past 2 years, we're primarily talking about chatbots. And I think that's really important because there are a lot of opportunities, just not with chatbots.
Well, and I will say that is consistent with my work. So in Washington, a lot of the policy debate is about, when it comes to AI and children, it's about, okay, how do we regulate AI chatbots? Should they be allowed for kids? Do there need to be more parental controls? Should parents be giving consent for their kids to use chatbots, or should they just outright be, prohibited? Alex, so since you do a lot of reporting yourself, and you might also be familiar with this policy debate, do you think that this question over AI and chatbots is separate from AI in education, or would you agree more with Michael, like that this is what we're talking about and this is a huge warning sign for introducing AI in education?
Well, I think the chatbots are an important part of what's happening with AI in education, but I think one of the things that we need to look at as well is how AI is going to be used and how AI is being used to process enormous amounts of data that's being collected on these children. Not just about what they know academically, but about what they think, about what they feel, about what goes on in their home, about their so-called mental health, and then creating profiles, and even worse than that, manipulating them. We have seen the power of AI to manipulate in a massive way. I mean, we've even had reports of AI chatbots convincing people to commit suicide. So once you have this enormous repository of data, and even years ago they were bragging that they were collecting hundreds of data points on every child, obviously a bureaucrat couldn't go through all of that, but once you put it in an AI system that can process that can make sense of it, that can detect patterns, like, well, these views are likely to lead the child in this direction, or these views might lead him in that direction, we're opening up kind of a Pandora's box here, where the hearts and minds of children, I think, are in great danger. And when you look at a lot of the people programming these AIs, I think that should compound our concern. Dr. Lindsay was talking about values. The people making these computer programs generally don't share our values. And so when we have this incredible power to manipulate the hearts and minds of really impressionable children, we need to be extremely careful.
Okay, well, you said a few things I want to talk about. I want to get into data privacy concerns in a little bit. But first, this worldview question. As you said, their worldview may not be in line with ours. And we heard in the first presentation that the state is largely a way for the left to get their views into how children are raised. Is AI just another opportunity for the left to influence kids' worldview?
100%. And I think that's one of the greatest concerns. If you go back to 2019, when the United Nations met in Beijing, of all places, they adopted the Beijing Declaration on AI in Education. What is the worldview of the bureaucrats and the diplomats who were coming together through the United Nations to come up with this declaration that essentially wanted to mandate AI in all education? Well, it's not the worldview that most Americans share. And I think this question is really, really important. I mean, Jesus said, you're either with me or against me. So that's pretty significant. And these kids are asking AI now, in school and out of school, really the existential questions. Who am I? Why am I here? What is the purpose of life? And we need to recognize that the companies and the people producing these AI systems have a worldview. If you were to do a poll of the programmers in Silicon Valley, you would find they are radically out of step with mainstream America. Godlessness is absolutely pervasive. Paganism is pervasive. They call themselves techno-pagans. So they do not share the values of average Americans, and yet through these AI systems, which the AI companies are really fused in a very real way with government. But through these AI systems, the left, the totalitarians, are going to have the opportunity to shape the worldview of children, I think, in an unprecedented way. I mean, yes, public schools have become very, very good at shaping worldview, but when you add AI to the mix, it's going to turbocharge this, I think, like nothing we've ever seen. So I think we really need to pay attention to this. And when we were talking about it in the state of Florida, that was one of the big questions. Can we regulate the worldview that an AI would be programmed to hold? And if we can't, is it something that we're really willing to allow our children to access unsupervised without proper training, without guardrails? And I think we really, as a society, need to be discussing this.
Thank you. And Jennifer, you have a background in homeschooling and classical education. Does AI have a role in those styles of education, or is it antithetical to those models?
Well, I take a little bit of a different view in that my focus really is on what is the best thing for the child. And I absolutely agree we need lots of guardrails put in place. But I think that there is a role for technology to play in education, but if done wisely. And we always need to ask ourselves, is this what is best for the child? And if that technology can, say, give an educator a engaging lesson plan, if that technology can help the science teacher who has, these 3 elements available to them or materials available to them to come up with an engaging lab. If a teacher who has a classroom of 20 is able to assign a paper and actually have thoughtful responses to that paper, if a technology can meet a student where they are and help them if they're on the fringes, maybe they're lagging a little bit or they're further ahead, to meet them where they are and help them, then I'd like us to entertain technology in that way, and I think it can be helpful.
Okay, yeah, balanced view. So let's get into some of those guardrails. Michael, what are some of the biggest data privacy concerns you have with some of these AI tools, whether it's data collection, who has access to this data, profiling? I think Alex went into a little bit.
Yeah, Alex touched on this. The honest truth is that education technology companies have been harvesting our kids' data for decades. AI may be the new kid on the street, but I'm telling you that the same companies that are selling you AI tools in schools were selling you ed tech 10 years ago. And these private companies, again, I've been working this a long time, they've been using LLMs to build models on your kids' data. So essays, drawings, pictures of them, whatever you upload into like the academic ed portal that you have access to with a login, they're just selling that data to the highest bidder. And all of this is, of course, in violation of the Child Online Privacy Protection Act if they're under 13. But, big surprise, over the years, schools have carved out a loophole so that they can give adult consent and parents don't have to, and they don't have to tell parents, which is devastating and wrong. And so, I would make the claim that the only real difference about AI is, number one, it's probably scarier to think about your son or daughter's face being used in generative AI that you might see in an outlet and on a website now being used. I would also say that a lot of this data that's being harvested is going to be harvested, sold, put back into advertising, and then sent to your children again. And so that's a whole feedback loop. So not only are they creating individual profiles, if you're terrified of the teacher or the administrator and what they're teaching your kid, well, now your kid's getting taught that, and now they're getting, they're showing their interest in it, and now they're getting ads back from it, and that should be terrifying to everybody.
Okay, so say you're at a school board meeting, and you're working on policy for some of these AI tools. What are some of the recommendations that you would suggest or demand?
Yeah, thank you. So actually, it's not hypothetical. My organization works with schools on their technology policy. At the Center for Responsible Technology, we have very specific K through 12 guidelines on AI. In terms of the chatbot, we do not advocate for bringing any student-facing chatbots into the classroom, full stop. None. That said, we do allow two minor exceptions. The first one is to teach a tech ethics or impact course, which we call literacy, right? Teach the child that they're going to encounter it in the real world, and like these are the dangers, and this is how you have to know about it. The second one, the second exception we have is if you're actually in kind of late high school, junior, senior, and you're programming, say, in an underlying software language like Python, I think it's really cool to try to build something interesting. I'm actually a really big fan of using hard technology skills to learn, not using, technology ed tech to learn basic skills, right? And so, furthermore, I would caution all school districts and school boards. I found this out just last week. Insurance companies are not protecting against AI incidents. So why? It's a very easy answer. They're widespread and growing rapidly, and they don't want to deal with it. They don't want to pay for it. So think very deeply as a parent or a school board if you're bringing AI into your school and you're not covered by insurance.
Well, that was news to me, but you're right. There are a lot of instances already of like privacy breaches because, I know at least one majorly reported event in Los Angeles. In 2024, the school district in that county signed a $6 million contract for a tech startup, and it was supposed to be an AI chatbot. His name was Ed, and he was supposed to help kids with their math homework and college prep. But very quickly, it was uncovered that there were serious data privacy breaches, and there was fraud. There were school district employees who were getting kickbacks from the contract finances. So this is a serious concern that this could continue to happen as more kind of like tech startups emerge and present themselves as vendors. So Jennifer, I think you have a background in like school curriculum. So kind of going off of that, and then also like the Chromebook issue. That's something like I wrote about is so they're almost like all public schools have Chromebooks because Google provided heavy discounts, so it was too good to pass up. And I think like several years ago, schools are more focused on the digital divide, and we have to get kids internet access. And now there's been some pushback on that because of just the increased screen use, and parents can't put external filters on them, so their kids can have access to content that maybe they wouldn't allow, and it's on their school-issued devices. So how do we avoid that vendor trap? Like what should schools be asking, or like what advice would you have to schools to prevent them from just taking up the deals that are too good to pass up?
Sure. I think it goes back to the question of what is best for the student. We know how to educate students well. We've done it for hundreds of years, and we've deviated from that since the Industrial Revolution because we were wanting to make good worker bees. We understand how to educate children. We understand that phonics is the foundation for reading. Right? We understand that we need to put good literature in front of our children to read. We need to teach them how to write well. We need to teach them how to think deeply and communicate well. So we understand that. So I would want every district to look at the newfangled thing through the lens of, does this serve our children well? Is it consistent with what we know how to educate children and do it well? And we want to make sure that we keep our kids safe. All of those things are really important. And the almighty dollar definitely comes into play with these districts, but they cannot put that in front of our children. Their safety, their well-being has to be first and foremost.
Does this serve our children well? That's a good question to ask. Alex, what questions would you recommend to parents who want to become more informed in what AI tools their kids may or may not use?
Well, I think parents need to really be focused on this, just like schools. And when you think about how fast this technology is progressing, there's no way any of us can really keep up, even if we spent all of our time doing it. But that's one of the reasons why I think a lot of this stuff, if the children are going to be using it, it ought to be open to the public. At least some of it needs to be open source. We need to know what kind of data these systems are being trained on. Most of these big AI systems are being trained on Wikipedia. We all know that Wikipedia bans legitimate content and promotes left-wing extremism. We know government bureaucrats spend a lot of time on there. And so they're being trained on bad information, and the old cliche, garbage in, garbage out, absolutely applies here. So I think parents need to prepare their children to understand this technology, and I think schools need to do that as well. This is a technology that's going to change the world. It's going to revolutionize everything from labor markets to business to the economy. And so we need our children to understand this, but it needs to be done in a very careful way. And right now, I don't think that's what's happening. So I would urge parents to be very careful with this. And I think the schools need to help. I mean, right now, this stuff is just coming in and parents aren't even thinking about it. It's not that parents are opting in. It's not even that they're being given the option to opt out. And I think schools need to do a better job, and parents need to do a better job of demanding access to this information. Again, this is one of the most powerful technologies I think that has ever been developed in the history of mankind. It's going to be able to do incredible things that can be good, but it's also going to do very dangerous things if we're not careful. We're watching that already. And so parents, just like you would teach your children the danger of a firearm, if you have a firearm in your house, you of course need to look into these technologies and figure out how you're going to keep them safe.
Can I follow
Yeah,
up
go
on
ahead.
that? So I think you brought up a great point about guns, right? That is a tool that in the wrong hands, very dangerous, right? In the right hands, it's life-saving, potentially. And I think that's what I'd love our posture to be with AI and technology in general. I think we have a trust problem more than we have a tool problem, because it can be a really powerful, helpful tool for students and their learning. But we don't trust the people behind it, right? We don't trust our public schools, right? The scales came off over COVID, and we realized this institution that we thought we could trust that we no longer can. Or, well, we never probably could. But I like it, and this is maybe a crude example or metaphor, is, it's like that spouse that you thought you could trust, and then you realize they're cheating on you. It's that kind of horrible, because these are kids, right? And we've trusted this institution implicitly with our children, and it keeps compounding, right? Can we trust the medical system? Can we trust our government? Can we trust,
No.
And right. And when you realize that, though, it's scary. How many of you are homeschooling families? I mean, when I became a homeschooler, I actually became a homeschooler because I didn't trust the medical system for my son. And once I realized I couldn't trust the medical system for him, then I started looking into all the other things that I trusted before, and school was one of them. But my point is that I think we need to be really careful about what we're vilifying. And I think it is a trust issue more than a tool issue. And so is there usefulness in the tool? I have to say, I think there is. Now, we need to work on the trust that is kind of encapsulating it. That's my perspective on that.
If I could extend the metaphor, because I own a lot of guns. Because I often compare the chatbot to the handgun in the closet. Yeah, even my oldest, most trustworthy child, I would not trust with a gun by himself, in a bedroom. And so Guns are awesome for adults and those who are trained very, 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 very well. Chatbots are extremely dangerous to the point of suicide and harm. And so, I've worked in technology for a long time, and I've worked in politics for a long time, and I can tell you that we always tell ourselves that we're going to use our technology well. And how many times do you find yourself scrolling and you don't know why, right? And if you can't discipline yourself, how can you expect a child to do it? And so that is always my concern about the chatbot is too much too soon.
Thank you for that. Well, earlier you mentioned the insurance problem and that things are going to go wrong. Like they will at some point, somewhere. Who should be held accountable? So the vendors, is it the school districts? Is it the teachers for not overseeing it? What do you think?
Me? So I think everybody that you listed should be held accountable. All of those, including parents. And I know I'm sitting on a Parental Rights Symposium panel, and parental rights are extremely important. But you have to understand that if you give consent to these chatbot edtech systems, you give them to your children, you're introducing them to flatly wrong information. I mean, we're talking about like a 45% accuracy rate on ChatGPT. Unethical creator bias, Alex already talked about that. Do you really trust the people that have made these systems and their ethical alignments? No. Learned helplessness and skill loss. I mean, the studies are very clear that children that are using these products are performing worse on pretty much every academic rating that we have. There's plagiarism, there's data harvesting, which we already talked about, and then there's exposure to inappropriate content. And I don't even want to get into sycophancy, companion relationships, cognitive deformation, and the fact that many of these startup companies that are selling edtech to your schools are using open Chinese AI models. I shouldn't have said open AI, that was a Freudian slip, but free open source Chinese models. And so that should scare you a lot. I personally think the AI conversation is sadly going to follow the same path, Annie, that we've seen with smartphones and screens in the school, where nobody's willing to take responsibility, there's inaction, and at the end of the day, the child is going to be the one holding the bag. And that depresses me.
It is an interesting dichotomy we're in because I think in the last few years there has been this realization that like the social media experiment has failed and that social media isn't so great as it was cracked to be, and especially for children. And we're all addicted to our phones and screens, and it's even worse for children. And schools are trying to roll back, saying no phones, no screens, but then now we're also ushering in AI. So it does seem sort of contradictory to each other. And I think it's probably largely because, we're being told like, AI is the future. And if you don't jump on board, you're going to be left behind. And so, kids need to learn the skills. So Michael, we've talked about like tech ed versus ed tech. And, but Alex, want to like turn this over to you. I mean, what do you think? Like, so are kids going to be left behind if they don't get on AI? Or there's also studies saying that kids' critical thinking is diminishing if they rely on AI too much. So are we just gambling our kids' future and just hoping for the best?
I think we absolutely are. And to go back to the question of responsibility for a moment, I just worked on a bill in Missouri with Senator Joe Nicola, and the main thing he was trying to accomplish is there has to be a person responsible for this somewhere. I mean, you can't have AI systems turning a child's brain to mush and then say, oh, well, sorry, that was the computer system. There's nobody to hold responsible. There must be somebody who can be held legally responsible when this thing goes crazy. And that's going to be a really tough debate because nobody's going to want to take responsibility for this. There's going to be liability implications. But ultimately, and I know the next panel is going to talk about parental rights, I think this needs to be a parents' rights issue. The school should not be exposing your children to technology that could be dangerous without your explicit permission. So this needs to be, in my opinion, in the hands of parents. Now, to the second part here, I do think, and I believe very strongly, that children need to be well informed on this. And that doesn't mean just let your child run wild with ChatGPT or Claude. In fact, I would never do that. Even for my oldest children, I've got 6, the policy is you do not use AI without asking mom or dad first, and we'll determine whether you can do it and we'll supervise. But I think they need to understand what it is. They need to understand the technology. They need to understand its uses. But as I have used AI, what I've found is it can be a useful supplement, but it can't be a substitute. It can't be a substitute for thinking or for writing or for doing research. It can just be a useful tool to assist you when you already know how to do something. And so I think that's the mindset parents should have, and I think as far as the government is concerned, where children and AI are concerned, that needs to be the responsibility of parents, but at the end of the day, there needs to be a human being accountable for when these things teach our children to commit suicide or do terrible things.
All right. Michael or Jennifer, any thoughts on that?
So I think AI in a closed system, I think, can be really helpful, and I've seen it. I've seen students who are feeling really badly about where they are academically because they've been matriculated when they shouldn't have been. And this young man got onto a platform to learn math, and that was able to meet him where he was in math and move him along at his pace without him being embarrassed in front of a class that he was far behind where everyone else was. I've seen the benefit of students being able to articulate what it is they are learning to something that is not going to pass judgment on them, but simply kind of correct them when they are misspeaking, and then that student participating more in a class because they've already articulated and kind of tested what it is that they know about a subject and be more confident in it. So again, I feel like we need to be really careful about what we're talking about and how. I think there's a useful way to use this technology. We need the guardrails in place to make sure that it is accurately teaching our children from a worldview that we want and that as parents we're clear on. And I just want us to be wise about the usefulness, possible usefulness of the technology.
You know, one thing I want to add without getting too philosophical is obviously Center for Responsible Technology. I really love the word responsible because the etymology of the word responsible is literally a human reply, a human response. And so I have to tell people, again, worked in machine learning for a long time, we may call them large language models, we may call them natural language processing. There is no language. It's not language, it's not a sentence, it's not a word. These are all probabilistic mathematical derivations of an algorithm, okay? They may look like a word, they may look like a sentence, they may look like really good ideas or a good summary or whatever it is, but it lacks the human author. The human author is the key to education. What we've seen with EdTech is that kids are growing up and they're unresilient because they didn't experience any adversity. Nothing was ever demanded of them in school. They just had YouTube and they're scrolling through math games, and we've seen the effects of that on our kids. What children need are human beings, human authors, responsible human authors who are challenging them to be their best selves. And so I'm very, very down on the next best word guessers being the source of education, particularly when I like to ask people, like, would you love your children to just go on the entire internet, take an average of the entire internet, and let that be your child's education? Because that's what all the models are trained on. So it's all math. It's not language. It's math.
Thank you. Alex, looking at the liberty versus convenience. So AI is very efficient and it can be convenient to use, and which might be great in the workplace where it's like just get your work done, but that's not really what education is about. It's not about just completing assignments. It's also learning and understanding. So what are some of the trade-offs that parents should be thinking about from a liberty perspective?
Well, on the convenience issue, yeah, your child could produce a brilliant essay with just a few prompts into an AI chatbot, and it would look really great, and it would read really great, and it would probably be logically consistent, but that wouldn't help the child in any way, really. So I think there needs to be a very, very clear set of expectations. The child is going to learn these things. They're going to learn how to think. They're going to learn how to write. They're going to learn how to read and understand what they're reading. And then the AI can just be a supplement to all that. Then getting into the broader issue of liberty, I think James really hit the nail on the head. We have a society that's based on principles of individual liberty. And many people, hundreds of thousands, millions of people over the last thousands of years died so that we could inherit this society based on liberty. And what I'm concerned about is that AI is a potential weapon. And in the hands of dangerous people, it can, and I would argue it will be used to erode our liberty. Right this moment in Silicon Valley, there are people plotting on how can we use this technology to change the attitudes, the values, the belief systems of American children and children around the world. I know this because I've seen their papers, I've heard their speeches, I've listened in on some of their meetings, I'd listen to what they say at the United Nations. They actually say these things. We're going to use these technologies to change the attitudes, values, and beliefs of your children. This is what they call the affective domain. They hardly worry about academics anymore because, hey, you could just ask the AI to write you an essay. What do you need to learn how to write an essay for? And so I'm concerned that if we just say, well, it'll be real convenient to use AI, the kids don't really need, and we hear this now, the kids don't even really need to learn how to read all that well. We don't have to think about those things because now AI and Google. I'm concerned that we will sacrifice not just the minds of our children, their ability to think and do things, but even more importantly, we'll sacrifice the foundations of our free society. And that's not a price I'm willing to pay under any circumstances.
So Jennifer, what would you say, so some people might say in terms of like parents who are like trying to get involved, they may say, relax, this is too complicated, just, they just need to trust the schools, the schools trust the experts, they know what they're doing. And you had your experience of not necessarily trusting the experts and having to go your own way. And so what do you think of that mindset, and what does it say or reveal about what some people think of parents?
Well, I know I'm preaching to the choir here, but unfortunately, I think that there is a very low opinion of parents in general, especially in the government school system. And that absolutely can't be the case. We all need to be the strongest advocates for our own children. No one knows our children better than we do. So we absolutely need to stand up for what's best for them. And again, I go back to the question, what serves my child? And we talked earlier about there's not a one-size-fits-all education that fits every single child. I mean, we need something unique. And if a system is not working for your student, then you say something. If a curriculum is not working for your student, then you say something and do something. That's why I think it's so important that we do advocate for school choice. We need the freedom to go and have choice for our students, have the money to be able to make those choices, and do what's right for our kids.
All right, well, question for each of the panelists. Okay, we all agree that parental rights are important and that it's the parents' right and responsibility to raise the children, not the states or big tech for that matter. Could you leave us with some advice or steps that parents can take or schools can take to ensure that parents hold the reins over raising their kids and overseeing their kids' use over these tools?
You want me to go first? Yeah. I would say to parents, opt out of student-facing AI systems to start. But I would demand strenuous AI education of teachers and administrators. Why? This was Alex's point. There is a rot that has been growing in the public education system for a very long time, and it's the question of, why am I even here? Why is this important? And if teachers are not armed and able to answer the question of why education, a love of education, is important, kids are going to go home, they're going to mentally check out, and they're going to use the chatbots. They're going to do it anyways, right? So that's what I would say to parents. To schools, I would say you have to be more transparent about what technology systems you're choosing, what they are, how they work, and give parents the opportunity to opt out. It's crazy to me that we live in the United States of America and you do not have the ability to opt out your kid from a technological education. That's insane, and that has to be fixed.
Yeah, I mean, I could answer it real easily, just homeschool.
Yes.
I'll say a little bit more than that. And I do recommend homeschool. My wife and I, we use Classical Conversations. I'm on the board of Freedom Project. There's all kinds. The Turning Point USA has done amazing things in this realm. So if you can find a way to do something other than government school, I couldn't recommend it more highly. If you are stuck in the system, I'd say you really, really need to be involved. You need to be watching these people like a hawk. They have the hearts and minds of your children in their hands, and many of them hate you and hate your values. You need to watch them like a hawk every second of every day if you can. You need to see what they're bringing home. You need to see what's on their little Chromebooks. You need to see what technologies they're being exposed to. You need to see what garbage books they're being force-fed at school. And you need to be really, really careful because, as James just so eloquently explained, they have a big plan. Not every teacher in the system understands this. Many of them are actively fighting against it, and I thank God for them. But a lot of the people at the top of the system hope to turn your children against you, against our country, and it's going to ultimately fall on moms and dads. I mean, I know we want school boards to be active, and we should be pushing for that, but if moms and dads don't take the lead here and insist on this, there's no school board in the world, there's no state legislature in the world that's going to be able to stop this from hitting us like a freight train. So just, if your children are in the system, watch them like their lives depend on it, because they literally do.
And if the schools don't give you access, sue them.
Absolutely.
Because moms are winning these battles. Sue them.
Absolutely.
I'd like to end on simply, our children are worthy of an exceptional education. And we, as parents, are the ones that know the tools that give your child the exceptional education that they deserve.
Amen.
Okay, well, to sum it up, homeschool your kids if you can. And if you can't, show up, ask good questions, ask the hard questions, opt out or demand that you at least give your consent to opt in, and pray.
I would add, if you don't have a choice and they're deploying these AI systems in your schools, ask to use it. Ask to use it for like an hour, and you'll find out very quickly whether it's very good or very bad.
It's a good idea, test drive.
Absolutely, good call.
I see we have a hand raised. I know we're having Q&A at the end, though, so, but please join me in thanking our panelists.
That was fantastic. And really good tips right there at the end. Yes, another round of applause, please. Holy cow. I feel a little more equipped. And poor Jennifer being our soul standing up. Hey, it's a good point, though, that it is a tool. It is a tool that is powerful. And I say it's honestly really similar to like smartphones. It's every parent's right to give their child a smartphone. But it is also, if you give them a smartphone, it is your responsibility to be on that smartphone like nobody's business, because including theirs, because you are opening up the world of dangers to them if you give them a smartphone. Not that you can't give them one, it's your right, but your responsibility is to make sure that they're protected on it. We're now going to bring all of our speakers up, and I'm going to ask my lovely volunteers who are going to help me bring a couple chairs up here for a quick Q&A session to wrap it up. All right, you can take your seats. Oh, did I lose my question? I'm going to open this up, actually, with a question, because I always like to make it interesting. So, AI, clearly, we've all got some concerns about. Well, there's a lot of people that are concerned about data centers, all the things, right? So I'm curious, though, because one of the biggest fights, one of the biggest arguments we hear is if we don't do it, then China will, right? That we gotta win, because otherwise China's gonna win. So I'm curious, though, I almost wonder if this fight against AI, this push to hate AI and data centers, is it possible that's a psyop from China to help us actually lose in this fight? And should we be for AI? So I've got a couple of AI people over on this end, so go ahead, Michael.
I kind of think the opposite is a psyop. I often say that if you want to lose the race against China for AI, put chatbots in classrooms. That's how you lose. We need amazing, genius developers and software developers, and you don't get that with a chatbot. And so, I mean, my talking point is always, yeah, win the AI race, but not at the cost of our kids and not at the cost of American excellence.
Very good.
I can chime in there, too. I am, of course, very concerned about the threat from Communist China. The dictatorship there has murdered almost 100 million of its own people. Imagine what they'll do to you. And they're very active in trying to influence what we're doing here in America. But I agree with Michael. I mean, if we do not educate our children properly, it's going to be a cataclysm, and we're well on our way to that. I am, of course, concerned about the data centers, but I would say the people who are making this argument that if we don't surrender our kids and all of our land and everything to AI and data centers, we're going to lose to China, these are some of the very people who have advocated for bringing over hundreds of thousands of Chinese students so that we can train them in engineering and science at our most prestigious universities, often at taxpayer expense. These are the same people who've been shipping our jobs and our capital and our 401ks into Chinese stocks, where they're using it to develop military technology. It's the same people who have been authorizing the sale of our most sensitive technology to this same murderous dictatorship. So when they show some real interest in stopping the bleeding, I might take the AI arguments a little more seriously.
So I like to make things more complicated than they have to be. So what if this is, I'm not joking though, what if this is actually like a reverse psyop? Okay, so like not just about the chatbots in the cloud, like what if this is actually the same strategy the United States deployed against the Soviet Union to beat them in the Cold War with the space race. So they're gonna make this AI race, build these data centers. They're crazy expensive. They're super resource intensive, and then the United States is not producing the energy output necessary to be able to do it. We lose the energy dominance in the country, and all of a sudden China has the massive energy advantage. So by making it look like China doesn't want us to build data centers, we suddenly get a bunch of MAGA Republicans who are skeptical of data centers to say, yeah, we need data centers, and we build them at breakneck speed. And let's say that actually the argument is fundamentally sound, because this gets darker. This is why I'm not allowed to speak on the boat. This gets darker because what we're building with the data centers is the same exact system of control that China has over its citizens already.
Amen.
So we're implementing the hardware that the software can later change upon if we build the thing. So I'm concerned about it being a psyop, that it might be a psyop. Like we're going like Inception psyops here, because nobody knows what's true anymore. And this is why I think what these guys are saying is absolutely foundational, which is there are things within 3 feet of your own life, namely your children in the back of their head, if necessary, that you can do something about. And so let's try to focus on that. I agree that the chatbots in the classrooms is a nightmare. But the China thing, I don't know the answer. I'm just saying, I'm just offering to you another possibility that it's a massive trick in exactly the opposite direction it looks like it is.
This is my favorite part, by the way.
Okay, I think the China argument is overplayed. It's kind of like the rationale, it's for national security. Like, no one asks questions. Like, oh, okay, national security, got it. I mean, I've met with some of the AI companies, and they're the ones like who are arguing for like not regulating, and they say we can't regulate AI because we have to beat China. Well, regulating AI, that's kind of like a whole separate argument. And I mean, we have the most advanced AI chips. Not exporting those chips to China, that keeps us ahead of them. Like they want those chips. That's why they're behind.
Excellent points. See, this is the fun part of the conversation. Okay, so the next one we got submitted ahead of time. If you had registered early, then you would have received an email from me with opportunity to submit a question. And I think this one is really good. We're going to go away from AI for a minute. What's the best strategy to get results? So many people are asleep on the issues in our culture. How do we wake them up and actually get them engaged? What have you seen or done that gets the needle moving?
Invite them to meetings. Go to the meetings, your local meetings, learn, experience. Just when you're going to a meeting, invite 2 or 3 people with you. Say, hey, if you don't like it, you don't have to go again. And that's exactly how I got started, was being in my community. And it's really cool to walk into a meeting for the first time and meet a legislator. No one in my family had ever really met a legislator. And I don't fangirl over it now, but I did. And I think that's the important thing, is they see how accessible these politicians are, that they can actually sway to make the changes they want made.
I was going to make a joke and say use your mom voice, but no, this is the correct answer, though, is to get hands-on. One of the most impactful things, actually, that happened when many things that I've done was I'm already a big advocate for a lot of the things that are going on. I kind of, like, in some sense, broke the ice on the queer theory issue nationally. And, yeah, I go to this event I get invited to in Kansas, and the person who invited me, we go to lunch. There's some legislators there. There's some other people, and kind of a mucky muck lunch or whatever. And she whips out a copy of Genderqueer, this book, in the libraries, which all of you would know about. And I knew about the book. I'd seen the PDFs. I hadn't seen a physical copy of the book in my life. And it's a fundamentally different experience to see and feel a physical copy of this book and see it in print before your own eyes rather than on a screen. So there are a lot of little things that fall into the realm of show, don't tell, or go on a field trip, this kind of stuff, that actually gets your hands on. And so when you can't get people to wake up, telling them, you can shake them in your best mom voice forever, and they aren't going to listen. But when you have to kind of give them the opportunity to see it for themselves. So if you think of how you can play a show, don't tell, or take a field trip, let's go do something together. Let's have lunch. Oh, I just happened to bring this book. Check this out. That actually is much more impactful than trying to sit and explain an issue to somebody who isn't ready to hear it.
And remember the statistic that 60% of people would go to church if they were invited. They just were never invited. So it's not saying that this is church, but similar concept. Okay, so if we have questions, I know there were some questions in the audience before, and Lisa is going to walk around. This lady with the green jacket. She's going to hold the mic, by the way, and we're going to keep them limited with the questions and don't run out of time.
I know the church protocol. She holds a mic. So I just came from CIF, and I was surprised how many of the female co-competitors are buying into what I call the Stockholm Syndrome. And I feel that ties into the social emotional learning, which we didn't really touch on too. But I'm gravely concerned because it weaponizes empathy and tells kids, especially girls, to give up their own Title IX rights. Can you speak on social emotional learning?
We've got this.
For a much more detailed explanation, we did a Moms for Liberty University event on this, I I think last year, yeah, in Tennessee. That's available on the website. I would check it out. But SEL is unbelievably insidious. It sounds so nice. Oh, we want our children to have empathy. What they've done is they've replaced the traditional competencies that we used to know and love, like the child can do his multiplication tables, the child can read an essay and summarize it, with new competencies that are in what they call the affective domain, things like empathy. And they define empathy much different, I think, than normal parents would. For them, empathy means you have to allow the girl to go get an abortion. You have to open up your border so that poor people can come across it because they don't have as many opportunities as you do. You have to believe whatever controversial political issue. Maybe it's homosexual marriage. So they're taking very controversial ideas. They're arguing that to display empathy means to embrace that idea, and they're using these devices and the artificial intelligence to make sure that children have the right response to the stimulus that's being presented to them. It's incredibly troubling. It actually gets far worse than that. The idea came out of the Fetzer Institute in Michigan, according to the organization that's leading the push for it, the Collaborative for Academic, Social, and Emotional Learning, funded by, of course, Bill Gates of hell, the world's top climate and COVID expert. And when you learn about the Fetzer Institute, you'll understand this is a very, very dark agenda. These are people who are deeply involved in communicating with their spirit friends and things that the Bible calls an abomination. They're open about this. Linda Lantieri, really the leading luminary in SEL, working with the Fetzer Institute, she's at Teachers College at Columbia University. She said in public that she's getting her ideas from this from conversations which she says, I hate to say she's past because she comes to my council table every night, but let's just say she's in another dimension. So this is bonkers, and it's being weaponized to fundamentally transform the attitudes, values, beliefs, and worldview of children. It is deadly poison. Don't believe your school administrators that this is essential for your child to be able to have good relationships. They had good relationships before anybody ever heard of SEL. So I could go on, but check out the Moms for Liberty University thing we did.
I'll add a little bit because everything Alex said is absolutely crucial. The Fetzer Institute is worth your time to look into. John Fetzer, when he ran it, he had a $200 million endowment that he gave it back in like the 60s when he opened it, which was a lot of money then. John Fetzer opened every single Monday night meeting that their group had with a channeling of the Archangel Gabriel. And so, I mean, they did weird stuff. Weird stuff. It might be Michael, actually. It's one of the archangels. It was Michael. Yeah, so not good. And so the other thing that I want to tell you about SEL is that SEL was promoted very heavily by the kind of, globalist monsters that we're all kind of afraid of. The United Nations in particular. UNESCO is really big in behind it. And UNESCO has a publication that they call the Blue Dot. And the issue that they devoted to SEL is rather horrifying. I did a podcast about it, but the image on the cover of that issue of the magazine was a child that had a little slot in the side of his child's face, a little slot in the side of his head, and they were plugging a new SD card in the side of his head that had like empathy and stuff written on it. And so it was literally this idea of reprogramming. And the article that they wrote about SEL was that teaching these crucial issues about climate change and social justice and all this is very upsetting to the child. And so this induces this experience called cognitive dissonance. And the social emotional learning tool is ideal because it allows the educator to manage the cognitive dissonance that comes up with what amounts to a brainwashing education. So the SEL was used to manage the emotional crisis that the educator was inducing by doing manipulative educational activities instead of educating. And so this was, this big promotional issue about why SEL is so good, and it literally was like, this is the tool that we're going to use to calm the kid down as he's going crazy because we're manipulating him.
Yes, we do have Alex's video on m4lacademy.org. It's m4lacademy.org, just saying. We also have our own YouTube channel. If you go to YouTube and search at M4L Academy, you can subscribe and get notified every time we have a new video, including Alex's, which actually we just had a brand new interview get dropped today. So definitely recommend you go check it out. It's very, very good. Where did Lisa go? Oh, there she is. Sorry, you were hiding.
Hi there. So I'm a school board trustee, and we are currently right now trying to formulate a board policy about AI use in our school district. And we went through the trouble of having a symposium where we invited our 5th through 12th graders to come and talk about their concerns and help us to develop this policy. And surprisingly, I guess I shouldn't be that surprised. The kids actually want us to be more restrictive than the adults do. They had a lot of concerns, and they actually wanted to see us formulate it by grade level, and for TK through second to not have any exposure to AI. And of course, our school district's already throwing that out the window. And so I'm pushing to, let's listen to the kids. We had them miss a half a day of school, and now we're just gonna not listen, that's dumb. So do any of you that were on the panel, have you developed a school board policy that you would recommend?
Moms for Liberty has a great
I
one.
was going to say, Moms for Liberty does
Yes,
have a
we
school
do.
board
And-
policy.
But my district's not going, if
Okay,
I
then I
let them
think we
know
have-
that that's Moms for Liberty, anything, it's gonna be completely dismissed.
Great question.
Take the name off the top.
Yeah, I mean, my organization is very kind sounding, the Center for Responsible Technology. And I mean, I want to be careful, but not so careful. In the development of an AI policy, it's very straightforward. Children should not be using chatbots in the classroom. That's a very easy chatbot policy to implement. And then when it comes to, educational systems, edtech systems that are being used by teachers to use AI in the classroom, I mean, that comes down to how the principal manages her staff and the way that they use these technologies. And again, it's very important to be transparent with the parents, let them know, give them notice. And so most of our criteria on chatbots are really focused on education, transparency, and consent. But in terms of the actual policy on AI, no chatbots. No, thank you.
Okay, I know, we've got over here. Sarah? No? I don't have a mic. Well, that's okay. Lisa can walk over. And I think that Rosalind had a question. I'm gonna, okay.
So I heard earlier on one of the panels, I'm not going to call this person out, but said that this generation coming up isn't resilient.
That was me.
Yeah, well, there it is. So I was being nice, but I have 17, 18-year-old kids. They've lived through COVID, an attempted assassination on Trump, the assassination of Charlie Kirk. Political climate's been crazy. We watched Antifa burn down cities. I mean, these kids have been through a lot. They talked politics as children, which is crazy. I never even thought about it. And I wanted to throw that out there. But leading into this, a lot of what I heard today was keep your kids away from it. No social media. And they also went through Chromebooks and cell phones. I mean, that's this generation. We talk about being resilient. If a cell phone existed back in my day, I would be in a lot of trouble. But they're a lot more strict because they're exposed to so much. So there's a lot of thought going into this generation coming up. But I heard a lot about no social media for the kids and hiding and protecting them, which I get. I'm a mom. But it's also my job to prepare them for this world. Eventually, they're going to live in this society where social media is part of what's going on. They're going to use AI. So should we be keeping this from them, or should we be educating them and preparing them for what's coming? And what does that look like? Thanks.
That is an awesome question, and I'm love that you asked it, because education is essential. Not use and consumption, but education. And the reason that, this is very straightforward, when we talk about adversity, neuroplasticity and learning, your kids are going to grow up and they might have traumatic sexual experiences. You don't rape them. They might use drugs. You don't give them drugs. They might drink till they're blacked out. You don't black them out in the house. There are ways to learn and teach literacy of technology in the home, which is extremely important. You have to give them the words to understand the technology. But in my view, as both a parent, an educator, and someone who works on responsible technology policy, our number one priority is to not develop addictive neural pathways in our children early in their life. So kicking that down the can as far as possible is absolutely key from my view. But your children are probably very resilient because you're a good mom.
Exactly.
Well, and I think you just exercised your parental right there to decide what's best for you and your family on when your kids get social media. I was on the State Board of Education for 3 years, and I just saw so much. Teachers, communications, the bullying, the naked pictures. I mean, our daughter sent her first naked picture in 6th grade. before we became cell phone free. And, you know, that's really hard to put back into the box. And it's just, it's different for every family, you know? It doesn't mean you don't, we're just giving you a little bit of advice, but I think that you know what's best for you and your children. Absolutely.
Okay, we've talked a lot about AI. Unsurprisingly, this is our last question. I want to open it up a little bit more to our school choice, our legal experts, since we had anything there. Do we have any other questions for them? Last question, too.
Yes, my name is Delia Dominguez Cervantes. I'm a Chula Vista Elementary School Board member here in Chula Vista. We have 50 schools, the largest elementary school in the state of California. Anytime, anywhere, our count is between 29,000 or so students, and I am the only conservative on there. And I had to retain my own attorney because of the attacks. So it gets costly for us, and I'm able to manage things. But my question is, we hear all these things coming out from the federal, and we get excited, and then the Supreme Court decisions, and like more excited. And then we've got California. And I don't know if you all are from California. It didn't sound like you were. And so, not trying to be pessimistic, but geez, guys, we could use a lot more help out here to wake people up. We're doing what we can to speak up and to tell parents. But we'd like to hear a little bit more of what we can do to apply the federal law here. So we're emboldened with the law, with our rights. And we tried it. Ms. Mary Davis over there, she walks all over the place giving information to parents. But there's a few of us. But I am begging, yes, what can you do for us to help us out here a little more in California? Thank you.
I'll jump in. I mean, we are, at Alliance Defending Freedom, we want to represent parents and teachers and others to challenge these bad policies, to challenge these bad practices. So, for example, we talked about the Mahmoud case. That case was about parents that had religious objections to what's being taught. We want to challenge that and say it's not just religious parents. If a parent, for any reason, whether it's because of their religious beliefs or they just object to SEL or whatever it is, they ought to have the right to opt their child out of that, to know it's being taught, and to shield their child. So, like, we are looking for teachers, families, others that are doing that in California and across the country, because I agree with you. Your rights should not be dependent upon your zip code. Rights are rights, and they apply just as deeply in California as they do in Texas or anywhere else in the country. So we want to stand with you all. And so when those situations come up, I would encourage you, reach out to us, because that's part of why we exist, is to represent and to stand with families and teachers and others that are advocating for these fundamental rights.
What's the phone number I call?
adflegal.org, and I've got a table in the back. I'd love to give you a card.
Did you want to say something? No?
I mean, yeah, I mean, there are many states where parents are being very badly treated. One of the ways the founders put into our constitutional system for people as an option is actually to pick up and move, right? Your ability to vote with your feet. And I know it's way easier to say that than it is to do it. But there are multiple instances, and I'm not saying California is like this, but maybe it is. But, you know, there are, for instance, you know, like big movements of people into Florida right now. In part. Yeah. Yeah. I know, but, well, I can tell you that I live in Arizona, and we want all y'all to come on out, right? So, I mean, but honest to God, it is, you know, if your state government is oppressive, there's 49 other states. I'm just going to put it on the table. It's not a solution for everyone, but it is a solution for some.
And we know, we recognize we can't cede territory, because if we do eventually, then it's bit by bit that we lose our communities and then we lose our country, right? All right, I just would like, can we all please give another great big round of applause for our incredible panelists. They've been so good, so appreciate them.